As a jiu-jitsu hobbyist, there are going to be traps and issues that you're going to experience no matter where you're at in your jiu-jitsu journey. If you know that you're going to be in jiu-jitsu for a while, you need to be expecting that there are going to be different challenges at different points in your jiu-jitsu career. And specifically with jiu-jitsu hobbyists, I tend to see three really big problems, and it has to do with where they're at in their journey. I want to break down kind of these three separate parts, when they start to occur, some potential reasons why I see them occur, and then how we can start to overcome some of these traps. How's it going, everyone? My name is Chasen Hill. I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. I've been teaching and training now for over 15 years. If you guys like all things jiu-jitsu, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also turn on that bell icon. That way you're notified whenever the latest video comes out. What are these three different types? First off, we have the newer jiu-jitsu student that's obviously going to be training for probably about a year or less. They're just now starting to get the hang of things. Most commonly, they're probably white belts. And then we have what I would call your veteran, someone who has been training between 1 year and around 4 to 5 years. They're very comfortable. They're probably a blue belt, maybe a purple belt per se, but they're very understanding of how jiu-jitsu training works, and they've experienced some problems already. They've overcome some hurdles. Then you have your grizzled vets that have been training, 6, 7, 8 years. Each one of those has their own kind of traps that I've seen students fall into. What classifies as a trap before we move on? I'm going to use two subcategories of a mindset trap and then a common training trap, or the way that students will train. Your mindset really does dictate how you're going to be doing that physical training. If you think you need to train in a more reactive way and you're more of a passive jiu-jitsu player, well, usually then in training, you're going to be a lot more relaxed. You're going to be a lot more calm, and that's going to be your style. Your mindset really does affect a lot of what you're going to do out on the mat. And then if you're this person that's like no surrender, give up nothing, and super aggressive and attack, and push, that's also probably your main training style. Understanding that the mindset really does kind of affect how we're going to physically train is very important. So you still have to connect them together and then do something about it, but that's a good place to start understanding. Now, when we talk about the styles of training, I want to introduce three things on a version of a scale. If you imagine a scale with two arrows pointing at each of these ends, on one end, we have something called reactive training. On the other end, we have something called aggressive training. And then in the middle, we have something called being proactive. I refer to this as the RPA scale. One of the reasons why I created this was because I found it very difficult to coach a student and say, hey, I need you to go from being reactive to just being aggressive. And then I need you to go from being aggressive to being more reactive. That's kind of like telling a sprinter to like run long distance. That's really hard to do. Can they eventually do it? Yes, but it takes time and there are steps for that to be done. I'm going to be using this RPA scale a lot. Let's begin with the newer jiu-jitsu student and the hobbyist student, because this is usually who are the bulk of the people that watch these videos. The main issue I see with these students when it comes to mindset is that there is only one right way to do things. Most students is that they say, nope, the way my coach says it is the right way. Everyone else that does it differently is dumb, stupid, or you follow some influence of somebody out there in the jiu-jitsu world and you're like, whatever that guy says is gospel, and I'm only going to do that. And I'm not going to listen to anything else. You're very kind of stuck in that mindset. And what that dictates is that training style. You are on the end range or the extreme of this spectrum. This is where I see most of these students kind of live. It's either they're super reactive or very passive, or they are super aggressive and pushing the pace. If you say, hey, I train for self-defense and I'm older and I want to be a little bit more passive, and I'm talking about all these things in my training, and that's kind of my mindset because that's what my coaches taught me, then your training is going to be super reactive based. It's only going to be really funneled toward that. So you're trying to train the techniques and train the areas that are more reactive. If you are this person who trains with maybe a guy that tells you to push the pace and surrender nothing and don't let the guard pass happen, well, then you're going to be very aggressive and you're going to push, you're going to try to attack, and you're going to give up nothing. You're going to try to escape in the first 2 or 3 seconds. They have zero middle gear. So my biggest recommendation for you is to understand that there is more than one way to do it. There is never just one way to do anything. I fell into this trap too until I became a little bit later in jiu-jitsu. I thought that the way I was being shown something was the only way to do it. If someone did it differently, they were stupid and they didn't know. And then you start to realize, no, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and you start to become a little bit more confident in that ability. I think for me, it was just like an identity. Like I'd worked so hard to learn it in a specific way. Like I just wanted that way to be right. I didn't want to feel like my time was wasted, but it's okay. Your time's not being wasted. You just did that research and now you're able to see when something is different, why it's actually beneficial for you. You can't skip consuming content. That's some of the best piece of advice I ever got. Sometimes people say people are long-winded and they overtalk and they explain too much. But the thing is that you will never know that detail unless someone tells you. Is there efficient ways to tell you things? Absolutely. But you can't skip learning content. If you just skip and you only see a picture book and no one explains the details of everything in the picture book, you are missing content. Yes, you can speed things up, you can slow things down, but you can never skip learning. Just remember that. When it comes to training, if you've identified yourself as being more reactive, how can you become a little bit more aggressive? This is where proactive really comes into play, because then I coach students to be what I call proactive reactive. Can I push them toward being a little bit more aggressive, but it's really being more proactive? How can I solidify their defense a little bit more? How can I make their guard retention a little bit more solid? And it's getting them to take early action, but they're not being over aggressive and extending. If you're the aggressive side, you want to be what I call aggressively proactive, meaning that you're just not grabbing to grab. You're not just shooting to shoot. There's an actual setup and there's a slow and methodic approach that's happening. So I'm funneling your energy towards something positive, not just sell out. There are times that you might need to sell out for something, but I'm trying to back you off from that, but I'm not trying to just cut it off completely. So with newer students, that is really where I'm trying to push or pull them a little bit more. It comes to you students that are veterans of the game and you have been training for at least, 2, 3, 4, 5 years maybe. The issue of mindset that you guys normally have is, I like what I like and I cannot do anything that I don't like. There's a big benefit in finding what you like. I'm a big fan of what's called inquiry-based learning, basically meaning that if you're not interested in something, it's going to be very hard for you to stick with it. Don't take that for ignoring fundamentals because they seem boring. But I'm a big fan of exploring and finding out the things that you like. Don't solidify your game too early on in your career. Sometimes you can become close-minded and say, nope, I've already found my game. I like what I like. And it's just that. And you kind of cross your arms and you sit here and you're like, all these stupid leg lockers, all these guys that invert. It's so dumb. I'm never going to do that. I like what I like. And it's kind of like that smug, more or less attitude. I did the same thing, man. I remember when I was around a purple belt, I was just like someone, if I saw them do something that was different from me, I was like, I'll never be able to do that. I like what I like. They like what they like, but mine's probably better. Going back to the training aspect with our RPA scale, usually you've developed that game in that home area of being really reactive or really aggressive. Some of the biggest things I see with veterans is they get very content in their jiu-jitsu. They don't like to push outside of that comfort zone. I encourage you to start to maybe expand a little bit more. Find how you can push between one and pull between the other. And actually, how can you go from actually being fully reactive to fully aggressive and start playing with that? That's how you're going to break out of that old man just sitting in place, because it makes you really kind of content with your jiu-jitsu training. You might be even in that like reactive, proactive area, but you just live there. You never go into that aggressive cue and you never go into that next quadrant or range. So I challenge you to start going into that other range. So if you're super aggressive, try to just back off enough to be a little bit more reactive in that way. And if you're super reactive, try to push to a little bit more aggressive. So as a quick announcement, I am teaching a free web training that is happening on October 5th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can register at the link down below. It's 100% free. I'm going to be teaching how you can improve your jiu-jitsu without having to train 7 days a week and watch endless hours of instructionals. Make sure you register. Brings us to our Grizzled veteran that's probably been training for possibly around 6-ish years. Their main mindset issue is that they know nothing, because now they've been around long enough. They've seen the trends happen, and they've seen enough people kill their previous two mindsets. They've seen people disprove that there's only one way to do something. They've seen people disprove that I like what I like and there's no other value learning the other stuff. And now you're like, wow, my eyes are open to all of the possibilities. It gets very kind of overwhelming, and you kind of are like, man, I don't really know what I should be doing. So you're kind of this like aimless wanderer. You're kind of good at certain aspects here and good at certain aspects here. What happens with these students is they live kind of right in the middle of proactive land, which is not actually a bad place to be, but now they need to develop the ability to instantly turn on the aggression or instantly become reactive. You have to be able to take that knob and a flip of a switch, become aggressive, and then a flip of a switch, become reactive. You have to know your home bases to become reactive, but then you also have to know your go-to things to become aggressive. And you have to understand how they play off of each other. And this is something that I see a lot of like my purple belts and my brown belts have a hard time developing, because you're coming out of that, I'm stuck and I'm in this mode, into like, now I'm kind of pushing you outside of your comfort zone. And what's really cool about understanding all of this, that is what it's like to develop jiu-jitsu for the rest of your career. This is one of the biggest things I didn't understand when I was coming up in jiu-jitsu, was I thought it was a collection of techniques and learning principles and learning the why and the how behind everything. Is that important? Yes. But what's even more important is that you learn how to develop something. You learn how you improve and what is the best way for you to become aggressive and ways to become more reactive. That is a very unique and individual journey. This is why buying into someone's idea by you can only do it one way in the beginning has so many fallacies involved in it. Because the way that they were able to become reactive and aggressive is not going to be carbon copy for you necessarily. You have to be able to develop your own self journey in to be able to do that. You have to be able to take more ownership of your jiu-jitsu and understand that the beauty of jiu-jitsu and what happens when you become a black belt is that you've actually just learned how to train jiu-jitsu. You've learned actually how you improve jiu-jitsu in the areas that you are strong and weak in, and areas that you now need to spend more time going through and refining and improving. That is really the journey of jiu-jitsu process and the development, not just the skill that's acquired. Yes, that's a byproduct of that process. If you don't understand how to train and how to develop them, man, it's going to be a long journey for you. That's why I talk very heavily about the actual training process on this channel, not as much about techniques, because someone's creating a new technique every day. And you can catch people with techniques out of novelty because they don't know them. That will work a couple of times. And you might even catch a really good black belt, but if he sees it 5 or 6 times in a row, if he has a good training system, he will kill it. And then if you don't have any more tricks in your bag, then what are you going to do? I guess some people that works for. That's just not how I've seen people have lifelong success in jiu-jitsu. That's really what I'm trying to coach students about. Those are the most common traps by the hobbyist type. If you guys like this kind of information, make sure you give this video a like. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Again, I'm teaching that free training on October 5th. You can register down below. And if you can't be there live, no problem. There will be a replay to send to everyone who does register. And with that being said, check out one of these 2 videos that'll pop up right here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.